Let's look a little bit at what pneumatic schematic drawings look like, because we're going to draw one. This picture is out of our book, and I gave you a PDF of this hydraulics chapter out of our book, and then this is his section on pneumatics, so he's illustrating some of the symbols that you see in a pneumatic drawing. Here at the bottom, at the beginning, is the compressor, and it has a symbol that looks like a hydraulic pump, except that the triangle is open, so that means it's air. Then think logically, okay, what happens? The air gets compressed, then it gets sent to a receiver. So here's the receiver, that compressed air tank, basically. Then when air is going to get sent to the actuators, like the cylinders or so, it needs to be cleaned up, it needs to be filtered so you don't send all kinds of dirt particles into your cylinder. So it goes through a filter, and that's just the classic filter symbol. Here is a symbol for a pressure regulator, and this might look familiar to you. There's a dashed line that means there's a pilot. There's a zigzag line that means there's a spring that pushes it into position when a certain level of pressure is reached. There's a sloping arrow, which means the thing is adjustable. The one thing we have not seen before is this little triangular foot on the pressure regulator. In a hydraulic schematic, we had a line coming out of let's say a pressure relief valve. We had a line that drained to tank, to the reservoir. Well, this is a pneumatic system, and we just, rather than draining back to tank, we just drain any excess air out to the atmosphere. So that's what that triangle is. That's a symbol for exhausting into the air. Here, this thing that looks a little bit like a filter but isn't, this is a lubricator. That's something that we don't have in hydraulic systems, but we do have in pneumatic systems. We'll look at that in the next set of slides. So it's kind of like a carburetor. It blows a fine oil mist into the air before it goes into the valves in the cylinders. Here's a valve. This might look pretty normal. The one difference between this valve and the hydraulic system is that in a hydraulic system, the return line will drain back to tank. In a pneumatic system, it just drains into the air. Now he puts a line going out into the air. If it were me, I think I would put one of these triangle feet on there. And then he's got a double acting cylinder symbol up here. Here's an example out of a Parker-Hannifin training manual, and what they're showing here is a simplified pictorial, a picture of a pneumatic system. And then over here on the right is a schematic drawing of the same system. So again, you notice, oh, and they are showing the motor, so that's something you can do. Here's the compressor with the open arrow. It's pushing some air through. Here is a pressure relief valve, and we can see that there's a spring that determines when it releases air or not. Then here's the triangle indicating that excess air is exhausted into the atmosphere. Then here's the symbol for the receiver, our pressurized air tank. Here's a filter. Here's our pressure regulator, and this system has a gauge on there. Here's our valve, and then here's our double acting cylinder, and looks like they have an adjustable flow control valve. Here's another example out of a different Parker-Hannifin training handbook. Now in this in this example, they have labeled all the devices in the schematic. This is just to show you what these symbols stand for, so I think you might find this helpful. However, on your schematic drawing, you would not put these labels, of course. You just draw the symbols. So, couple of symbols we have not seen before. Here's a filter that has a it's called a water trap, I think. There's a water trap and a drain that you can drain the water out of. And then here's a thing called an aftercooler for cooling the air. The air gets hot when it comes out of the compressor, and so this is a little chiller thing that chills the air before it goes into the receiver and the other stuff. Here are the next couple of slides are two examples of pneumatic circuits from a pneumatics textbook. This is a circuit that is a sequencing circuit, and this does not show all the other stuff that you need, like the compressor and the receiver. So this is just showing some of the valves and how they go to the cylinders. Notice the first cylinder here is single acting, so there's just a line coming in. Then there's a spring that determines when air gets exhausted outward. The second cylinder, you can see, is a double acting cylinder, so there's an input line and a return line, and it can go either way. And then you can look at some of these valves and see spring return, manual operated, spring return, pilot operated, manual operated with a detent, that's like a ratchet. Here's a different sequence circuit from this same textbook. Similar idea. You can notice these triangles on the valves that show where return air is exhausted to the atmosphere. And what else can you see? This unit down here at the bottom is a unit for conditioning the air that we will look at in the next set of slides. This is a, let me see, what do we got? Filter, regulator, and lubricator all glopped together in one unit. We'll look at that later. And we're not going to draw this thing on our schematic. I'm just telling you that's what that is. So on our schematic, thanks to our textbook author, he suggests, let's take our dorky sketch that we imagine we got from our engineer back when we did our hydraulic schematic, and let's convert that drawing that you did into a into a pneumatics. So there are some things that are different. With your hydraulic thing, you had a pump. You'll convert that to a compressor. With the hydraulic thing, you had symbols for the tank. You won't have that. You'll have little triangle feet showing that it exhausts to the atmosphere, and you'll have a receiver. Now, because this is pneumatics, you'll want to put the receiver after the compressor. You will have a lubricator, and instead of a pressure relief valve, you'll have a pressure regulator. It's almost the same. And you don't need that, let me back up. That thing there, that conditioning unit, you do not need one of those in your drawing. So just to review what we saw on the first slide from our book, not that your drawing has to look exactly like this. He's got everything arranged vertically. You can arrange yours however you want. But the point is, here are some things that are different. So instead of a pump, now you will have a compressor, which looks about the same, but it's got an open triangle. Then the receiver, your air tank, it has to come after the compressor, whereas in our hydraulic system, you drew your tank coming before the pump. Now your tank or your receiver comes after the compressor. You'll have a filter. Instead of the pressure relief valve, you'll have a pressure regulator. Here's how he's drawing it. You'll have a lubricator. Here's the symbol. And for your valve, it exhausts to the air instead of returning to tank. I took the liberty of adding one of those triangular exhaust symbols because I didn't like his draining outline. So there you are.